Banshees of Inisherin. Now this is a film that really caught my attention straight away because it reunites Colin Farrell and Gleeson in another dark comedy, the last time previously being In Bruges, which was of course directed also by Martin McDonagh. But this time, instead of being set in Belgium or in another city, it's actually set on the coast of Ireland. And I think these days when you've got films that are either set or around Ireland, it tends to be a film about the cultural side of the country, somewhat like Kenneth Branagh's Belfast that we got last year. And I originally felt that the Banshees of Inisherin would take us in another different direction about life within Ireland and just the people that live within the country. So as I've already mentioned, the film is set on a remote island on the western coast of Ireland, and it follows friends Farrell and Colin, who find themselves in a difficult position when Colin abruptly puts an end to their friendship, with consequences lying ahead for both of them. So in this film there are a number of different themes and arcs that kind of help us, the audience, reflect on things that happen in life. So Inisherin is a fictional village that takes place on the island, and it was filmed on two separate islands around the Irish coast. And this story in many ways is about life at the current time and reflecting on perspective going forward into the future. And I think a large recurring theme about the film is, what does the word nice mean? And it can be interpreted in numerous different ways. This film kind of reflects it in terms of friendship and, you know, relationships that people develop with each other over time. And it makes us, the audience, think, is nice actually being genuinely emotional and being compassionate towards other people? Or is it taking a step back away from people in order to give them space and give them time to reflect on things in their own lives without the pressure of things? Or is being nice a way of taking yourself away from other people and doing things that you love in your life while you still can? And when you look at it like that, the film does go to quite deep waters, ironically, in which the film really does invoke perspective and touches upon how we reflect on things that we do in our lives and what we want to do with them, with the days that we have left. So the story is very thought-provoking in that respect, and it was actually quite depressing in a lot of sequences. But despite that though, the film was being directed by Martin McDonagh and it was reuniting Colin Farrell and Gleeson. There was going to be some subtle elements of humour within the story, and there was, and it was a really clever combination of how the underlying wit of the story, particularly through the dialogue and the ways that the characters interlinked with each other, really kind of softened what was actually quite a depressing story. So in that respect, the writer and director really kind of pays homage to the Irish people and the humour that they represent among themselves in that community. And I thought it was rather funny at the best of times, and often it becomes quite difficult for a lot of people to appreciate black comedy because, you know, comedies are meant to like make people laugh out loud, burst out, and you kind of do that in this one, but it's almost quite silent, so you kind of you know, chuckle in your mind. And I think that's what kind of enlightened the tone of the story, but at the same time it really kind of helped us understand the characters, and that's why it worked so well. And as well as In Bruges and this film, Martin McDonagh has made other crime dramas and comedies in the past, including 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri and 7 Psychopaths. And you could tell that this was one of his films, not just because it starred Colin Farrell and Gleeson, but also just the way that the black comedy blends itself into the story. Because otherwise, if the black comedy wasn't there at all, it would be deemed like a tragedy. And I'm not saying that would be a bad thing, but I think it would just kind of make the audience kind of miss the point. And I think the humour was a large part of that. And especially when it was a clearly close relationship between two characters, because they both seem heartbroken because of how much it's kind of fallen apart, but because the characters would have laughed with each other as friends in previous times that happened before the film. And I think the dark humour between the two characters was the final ounce of the laughs that the characters would have had in the events previously. So in that respect, it was about showing us that the characters' relationship was deteriorating, but there was still a little bit of that friendship still there. So that was clever, I thought, on part of Martin McDonagh. And the fact that the film is set on an island with a war taking place in the distance on what appears to me, at least, on mainland Ireland. It isolates the people of Inisherin, in which the island itself becomes this kind of enclosed space away from everybody else, which kind of portrays the people of Inisherin as almost like different versions of human beings, and maybe even different kinds of Irish people. And that symbolism really worked because of how the film was shot, while at the same time it would trick us, because when you look at the aesthetic shots of the island, of the sea, of the mountains and all those things, that it would look beautiful because it was stunning, and it really kind of painted a false picture of life on that island. And the panning shots in which the camera was moving gave us time to embrace the awe and the beauty of the scenery, but also to give us time to reflect on how that kind of environment really affects the characters. And that was rather obvious because a lot of the time the director would often cut back to a lot of landscape shots. And the film was beautifully made. Now, as well as in Bruges, Martin McDonagh has worked with both Colin Farrell and Brendan Gleeson on 2 separate occasions, with Colin Farrell in 7 Psychopaths and Gleeson in a short film called 6 Shooter. And Colin Farrell absolutely shines in this film as Pádraig. And Pádraig is a character who's almost like a normal person because he's just deemed as this quite nice Irish guy who's just living his life as he normally does. And he goes to meet his friend Colm, and then things start to change because Colm doesn't want the friendship anymore. And he himself questions whether it's him that's the problem rather than Colm. And that can be quite self-destructive because maybe he cares too much about the friendship that he has with Colin, that he makes him kind of almost desperate to reconcile that friendship by going down a little bit of a downward spiral. But Colin Farrell's performance as Pádraig in this film was absolutely brilliant, and I think the wit and the humour of the character was something that kind of represented the ways in which the Irish sense of humour works, while at the same time it's something that's very, very emotional, and that's what the side that we saw to him in this film. And Brendan Gleeson was equally as fantastic in this film as Colin Farrell was. Now, I think to myself, he was probably the most interesting character in the whole film because he's got a love for music, and because of his age, he's starting to think, my time is starting to run out here. I'm getting older and I'm immortal. And he's at a critical stage in his life where he feels like he has to make drastic changes to it in order to be able to achieve what he wants to achieve in life, even if it is at the cost of losing friends or losing loved ones. And Colin is a passionate musician who wants to be remembered, so he tries to spend the rest of his days composing the music so people will listen to it in years gone by. And it gets to a point where this character is almost obsessed with time passing on, and that he needs to do what he needs to do before he passes away. And it was that obsessive that it was only getting more dangerous for him, in which he was kind of falling down a rabbit hole even more than he was at the beginning of the film. And I think because Colin was telling Pádraig that he doesn't want to be with him anymore and he kind of finds him a bit dull and boring, it makes the audience think it's not really him at all. It's more about Colm's reflection on his own life. And Brendan Gleeson's performance was absolutely amazing. It really was. And I do think that both Gleeson and Farrell should and will get Oscar nominations. Another standout performance in this film was Barry Keoghan, who played Dominic. And he's a young man who showcased the innocence of youth living on that island and dealing with some of the horrifying things that people do there. He's also looking for love, which also makes him a quite interesting character. And Barry Keoghan's performance was brilliant in this too, and I think he should get an Oscar nomination as well. And another great role in this film was Kerry Condon as Siobhan, who is Pádraig's sister. And her performance in this film was truly a very thought-provoking and emotional one. And I think being virtually one of the few women that we see in this film, she's the one who tries to keep everything together and try and maintain the peace on an island in which any kind of feuds really is almost inescapable. And it really kind of overwhelms this character, especially as far as Pádraig and Colm's relationship is concerned. And Kerry Condon's performance really kind of shone through there. And I think she was equally as good as everybody else was in this film, and she deserves an Oscar nomination as well. So overall, the Banshees of Inisherin did somewhat surprise me in terms of how deep it was. I mean, given the director and the fact that it was reuniting Colin Farrell and Brendan Gleeson, I knew there was going to be a lot of wit and humour in this story, but I did not expect there to be as much drama and heartbreak in this film as there was. And I really do like when films surprise me, and this is another one that did that, and I'm hoping that it will get a lot of Oscar nominations. So what did you think of the Banshees of Inisherin? Did you enjoy it? Did you not enjoy it? Were you surprised by the emotion of the story in the film? Did the wit work for you? Were you glad to see Colin Farrell and Brendan Gleeson back? Let me know in the comments below, and as always, if you did go on to enjoy this video, then please hit the like button and subscribe for more, and have a notification bell ticked so you're notified when I upload a new video, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care, everybody.